debate. The honourable member for Simcoe North.
Madam Chair, it is really wonderful again to see you. I thought the last time I was going to see you before the holidays was my last speech just a couple days ago, but yet again, it is a delight to see you in the chair again this evening. It's a pleasure to rise on behalf of the constituents of Simcoe North and residents of Simcoe North, but to talk about a very important issue. We're talking about tax relief for Canadians. Now, if the government wanted to provide relief to Canadians, they would have done it in an easy way. They would have taken the GST off of everything. They would have made it administratively simple. They want to talk about how in the previous election campaign, a Conservative leader at the time, a Conservative Party, campaigned on a cut. They're trying to say that this is the exact same cut that the Conservatives ran on in the last 21 campaign. That is false. The Conservatives ran on a one-month GST holiday on everything, on fuel, on food, on every single item that GST is charged. That is not the same plan that this government is proposing here today. Now, we should also talk about control. This is yet another example of the Prime Minister wanting to control your life. He wants to give you a tax credit, or a tax break, but only on the things that he agrees you to get that tax break on. Let's go through the list. If you want to buy a hard copy of the Toronto Star, that counts for the tax break. But if you want to buy the renowned Walrus magazine, you still have to pay GST. Christmas trees are on the list, thank God, but not decorations. You can't buy that star to put on the top of the tree to get that tax break. You can't buy that wreath to hang on the door to get that tax break. Jigsaw puzzles, Madam Chair, are on the list. You can spend 3 weeks hiding out, putting that 1,000-piece puzzle together, that jigsaw puzzle. But jigsaws, if you want to build something in your garage and use a jigsaw, Madam Chair, you don't get the tax break for that. Coors Light, if you want to just put your feet up and have a Coors Light, it's under 7%, no GST. But if you want to have that Boneshaker 7.1% from Amsterdam Brewery, no, it's not going to be on the list. But maybe they want to go and talk to the Kingston Brewery that makes Oats and Cream that has over 7% IPA for beer. Not on the list. Now, let's talk about some other things. Candy and snacks. Why on earth would you have a government who specifically singles out sugar as getting a tax break when many stakeholders, Diabetes Canada, Heart and Stroke, Canadian Cancer Foundation, have all been promoting a special sugar tax? I don't think they're too happy with this tax break. Also, the Canadian Cancer Society came out publicly and said they shouldn't be taking tax off of alcohol. Why are they talking about picking and choosing these special things on what you might put in your grocery cart? Some are in and some are out. It's absurd. It's a list that only pointy heads in some government agent could have put or government agency or government department could put together. I was at a local restaurant last night, wonderful run restaurant, and the proprietor said, I don't even know how these rules are supposed to work. I called the GST line at CRA, and they didn't even know how they were supposed to work. What if I'm selling tickets to a party that has food and beverage on it, but some of the spirits don't have the tax credit on, or the tax break on, and some do, and I'm selling food, and I'm selling those tickets today for a party that happens on New Year's? Do I charge the HST on those tickets today? Unclear. It is completely absurd. They should have either taken the tax off of everything or left it on everything. Not to mention the fact that we're in a deficit position. If they would have said, hey, we're going to spend $2 billion on this and this is where we found the savings to pay for it, maybe that would have been a different conversation. But let's talk about the NDP. A previous principled NDP party stood in this place and decried, absolutely criticized reducing the GST. And why is that? They criticized reducing the GST because, as I will quote from the Canadian Centre of Policy Alternatives, which the NDP likes to quote very often in this House. Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives. Imagine a tax cut that you only get when you buy stuff. And I'm quoting, this is in relation to GST cuts in a previous government. This is a tax cut which disproportionately favors high-income families. For every dollar of this tax cut received by low-income families, $3 goes to families that are not low income. That is the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives talking about a GST cut and the impacts that it has on low income people. Now, what could have the government done? The government could have just doubled the GST credit, which, by the way, had support of all major parties in this House just 2 years ago. Every party in this House agreed to increase the rebate check, the GST rebate check that goes to low-income households. 11 million people doubled up on the payment that they got. That was supported by every party. Every party voted for that, including Conservatives. We believed that we should help the lowest income people possible. This is not a targeted measure to low-income people, Madam Chair. This measure goes to every single Canadian, whether they need it or not, and it is costly. It's costly to administer, but it's also costly to the Treasury, and the government is already in a deficit position. If they had come up with a dollar-for-dollar rule to say this is how we're going to pay for it, and let's also remember, just 2 weeks ago, the Bank of Canada governor said the fight against inflation is not over. And when a government runs deficits, that is fiscal stimulus. The Bank of Canada governor also said, almost 2 years ago, if you want to help people with the effects of inflation or those that have a problem with affordability, those measures should be very targeted. It would have been very targeted to give an additional doubling of the GST, HST credit that low-income individuals have. That would have only went to 11 million people. It would have reduced the overall cost. It would have been administratively very easy to deliver. You just double the payment. And by the way, Madam Chair, when we talk about the checks that are also going to be going, guess what? The people in this chamber get the checks. Why on earth would they design a program to give checks to members of parliament when there's low-income people that do not work, like seniors that don't work or people with disabilities that don't work, get nothing? It absolutely makes no sense. And not only that, economists said just 2 weeks ago before this announcement that the Bank of Canada was on track to reduce mortgage rate or reduce the interest rates by 50 basis points. Now those same economists say that the Bank of Canada cannot reduce as much. They might only reduce by 25 basis points or hold interest rates steady. That means when politicians spend, Canadians pay more on their mortgages. Conservatives are for permanent tax reductions, shrinking the size of the deficit, and making sure that Canadians have more money in their pockets long-term. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Questions and comments. The Honourable Deputy House Leader.
Just wow. Like, unbelievable. I am sitting here for 10 minutes listening to a Conservative member talk about taking care of the most vulnerable people in our community like he somehow cares. Are you kidding me, Madam Speaker? He's trying to lecture us on giving supports for the most vulnerable in our communities. He's voted against every single measure. His government, his former government, the Conservative government of Stephen Harper, told seniors, you got to work 2 more years before you can retire. Every measure we brought along, lowering the tax on the middle class, increasing OAS, increasing GIS, every single measure he voted against and his party voted against. And now he's going to stand up in here and lecture us on taking care of the most vulnerable in our community?
The honourable member for Simcoe North.
Says the member whose party created 2 tiers of seniors in this country, those who are below 75 and those who are above 75. And for the record, Madam Chair, maybe that member needs to get some facts straight. Conservatives on this side of the House decided to vote in favor of doubling the GST credit that went to the poorest households in this country. So I have no idea what that member has been thinking about or who he's talking to or where he's getting his facts. But he should double check them before he stands up in this House.
Questions and comments.
The Honourable Member for Rosemont-La Petite Patrie. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I listened to my colleague's speech with great interest. I don't understand why, when the Conservative Party says that tax must be brought down, the Liberals are finally doing that because they listened to the NDP request to reduce taxes on food, children's clothing, diapers, basic staples, and things like that. Well, when the Conservative Party repeats over and over the need to reduce taxes, now suddenly they flip-flop, they go in a complete different direction, they go against their own 2021 campaign promise, and they refuse to give a break to people who need a break. How could my colleague explain this flip-flop?
Madam Chair, why don't they just take the GST off of everything and reduce government expenditures to pay for it? There's a problem. We do not have enough money. I've been around this town for 3 years, and I still can't find the money tree that these parties think exists in this town. Why do they think we have to keep spending on deficits? Not only that, the NDP asked for taxes off of heating bills. They asked for taxes off of cell phone bills. The government's not even doing that. And by the way, talk about staple. What about fuel? How come not taking the GST off of fuel, Madam Chair? That would have been maybe a little more palatable for people as they travel over the Christmas holidays or the winter holidays, whatever religious holidays they observe.
Questions and comments. The honourable member for Perth Wellington.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I know the member from Simcoe North speaks a lot with the constituents in his riding, and I want him to comment on whether his constituents agree that our tax system is far too complicated and whether it might be smarter to have a simpler, fair, and lower tax system for Canadians.
Honourable member for Simcoe North.
Madam Chair, what an excellent question, astute observation from my friend from Perth Wellington. He absolutely nails it. The amount of time that people are going to spend trying to figure out what's in, what's out, retooling their machines, when the government could have easily just said, look, for the whole month or the whole 2 months, we're going to take the GST off of everything. It would have been far simpler for people to manage. There's no question about it. And that's why after the next election, there will be a special tax task force to bring production home, to simplify the tax code, and to grow our economy. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Questions and comments. The honourable member for Fleetwood Port Kills.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The honourable member, I got a little time for him, but he just admitted something. The Conservative plan back in 2021 would have taken the tax off of everything. And I would appreciate his reaction to this scenario. Somebody goes out and they buy a present for their little one for $25. Taking the tax off saves them $1.25. Somebody goes out and treats themselves to a $25,000 watch, and they're saving $1,250. It seems that once again the Conservatives are tilting the playing field toward those who can spend the most. Can he comment on that?
Very brief answer from the honourable member for Simcoe North.
Madam Chair, it's an interesting question, but if the member just swapped what he was talking about for food, the exact same thing applies to what this government is doing. If you were to go and to take your friends out for a nice dinner and spend $10,000 on food, which a number of, well-meaning people might actually be deciding to do after this, they get a huge tax break. But if you want to buy, as I said before, all these things, you want to buy decorations for your Christmas tree, it's not on the list. It actually doesn't make any sense.
And we are way over time.